Welcome back, my listeners. If this is your first time landing on the Menopause Disruptor podcast, welcome. Happy you found me. Tell your friends. Let's get this crowd growing so that more people can be influenced and learn about menopause, symptoms, and symptom management. This is what the show is all about, disrupting the narratives around menopause so that us women can come together and find some true strategies, be it bioidenticals or holistic strategies. There is always help out there. There are always tools that we can put in our toolbox. Every woman's menopause is different. Symptoms show up individually, personally, but the experience is universal. If you're listening in real time, I'm recording during the month of March. And March has been known to be the month of madness, March Madness. And I will say this year we are in the throes of March Madness. Now, this term, for all you basketball players out there, does not have its origin in basketball. Its history dates back further than 1939, truth be told. And this form of madness is related to this uncharacteristic behavior that's said to affect people in March, be it from the tumultuous weather patterns to the intense political climate and the economic uncertainty unfolding in the world today. And I referenced that in my last episode. By the mere fact alone that March aligns with the spring equinox and welcoming in a new season, March can bring about so much change. Change is inevitable. Nothing is impermeable, to quote Adam Pierce of Love Your Brain Foundation. So what if instead we look at March as a time of mindfulness for welcoming in what is coming up with curious observation? For the Love Your Brain Foundation, March is Mindfulness Month, March Mindfulness. And I recently began a 10-day meditation journey to cultivate more mindfulness. The Love Your Brain Foundation is a nonprofit organization that improves the quality of lives of people affected by traumatic brain injury, and it also helps raise awareness about the importance of brain health. You can read more about that. It's linked in the show notes. But for me, and my next guest, well, we met during a Love Your Brain teacher training in 2023. Today, Adriane Dellorco has a thriving, successful online yoga program. Adriane has taken her teaching as well as her personal experience, coupled with the skills and insights that we learned through the Love Your Brain teacher training to support women with migraines. Interesting fact. During menopause, many women experience increased migraine frequency and severity, with a study showing that more than 12% of perimenopausal women suffer from high-frequency headaches compared to 8% of premenopausal women. Now, this rise is mainly due to fluctuating estrogen levels, but migraine health is much more nuanced than that. And seeking effective management practices is so important in our menopausal journey. Bringing it back to mindfulness, we can cultivate kind awareness of our pain and our grief, as I spoke about last week, through mindfulness. And yoga is one such practice that invites in that support. Adriane will share her personal journey with migraines, which began as far back as 2007, and how it led her to develop a comprehensive program integrating yoga, pain reprocessing therapy, and self-care practices specifically for women suffering from migraines, especially in the perimenopause years. We will also talk about the interconnectedness of migraines with menopause and the challenges women face from a biopsychosocial approach, which Adriane uses to help her clients achieve significant symptom relief. This world's leading expert, she has been featured in numerous articles, including Migraine World Summit, Healthline, Health Central, First for Women magazine, and migraine.com, for which she writes regular articles. Her certifications in pain reprocessing therapy, PRT, and pain care aware yoga have given her cutting edge skills to help clients with chronic migraine reduce their chronic pain and feel more empowered in their daily lives. She is proud to advocate to Congress every year in Headache on the Hill and to be a finalist in the Waco Health Social Health Awards. She's a mother of two and a former public school teacher and brings her life experience of living with migraine into her healing yoga practices. You can find Adriane and all of her course offerings online at yogamigraine.com, and she's also on Instagram at yogamigraine. Welcome, Adriane Dellorco. Very happy to have you on the show to talk about one of the symptoms that many women have experienced, maybe all through their lives, but certainly with perimenopause, and that is migraines and intense headaches. You and I met on a yoga course. It was through the Love Your Brain Foundation, and it was for traumatic brain injury yoga teacher training. It was in our cohort when you shared your story about migraines and developing a program, which we'll all talk about, that really inspired me. And it was just a light bulb moment. And I knew that I wanted to have you on the show. It's been over a year, but we're finally connecting. So good to see you. Welcome.
Thank you. It's been an honor to hear about your work and be a part of your podcast. And yeah, to see how all these little threads intertwine between traumatic brain injury, menopause, migraine. There's a lot of overlap.
That's right. There never should be treated in isolation. And just having that full picture, I really advocate for this, is sharing that full picture of your medical situation, the symptoms, maybe past trauma, and perhaps a concussion. They all play together. We'll get into that. But first, Adriane, I would love if you can share with us your personal experience that led you to become the best leading experts in yoga for migraine.
Yeah, so I consider myself somewhat lucky. I didn't develop migraine until my mid-20s. I work and know many people who've had it since childhood. And for me, I developed migraine during a stressful time in my life. I started out being a public school teacher. It was like my first year teaching, notoriously stressful and overwhelming for any teacher. And then really my migraine started with my menstrual migraine. And then that's very common where during our period, we might experience more headache symptoms before, during our period. And that's what I first started seeking help with. And through that time, most of us just start going to our doctor. And after some migraine is one thing that people don't realize. It is definitely much more than just a bad headache. So once you start developing some other symptoms, then that's one indication. Okay, this is more than just headache. So yeah, I had a few real doozy of attacks, right? The nausea, vomiting, light sensitivity. And so with migraine, it is a very body-based, it's not just in our head. It is a neurological genetic condition, and it's much more common than people realize. Really, about a quarter of all women have experienced migraine throughout their lifetime, and it is one of the most, I think it's the third most common health condition in the whole world. So everybody knows someone with migraine or maybe experiences migraine themselves. So yeah, I started out just trying to get medication and working on stress relief. And over the years, just progressively with life, stress,
Yeah.
having children, it developed into a chronic level where you have at least 15 or more headache days a month. And that's when it really started taking a toll on my life. And I was just running through so many medications, trying this, the next one, different diets. Most of us with migraine have just tried so many things to get a handle on it. And then as a result of just the debilitating nature, the effect on my life, I developed more depression, like the mental health aspects of living, especially with chronic migraine, were intense. I felt like I had to give up everything, or I didn't know what my future would hold. Would I be able to hold down a job? It really turns people's lives upside down. But the yoga piece came a little bit later. So interestingly, I have practiced yoga since I was 13, before I even had migraine, and it was always really a source of calm and peace and enjoyment for me, just for a personal practice. And before I developed migraine, I used to do very intense, sweaty, heated classes and really get into that athletic aspect of it. But when I developed migraine, I wasn't able to continue that level of intensity. So for me, like heat is a trigger or a lot of intense physical exertion. And I was not sure if I could continue practicing yoga. I loved it. And that was another one of those things like, do I have to give this up? And that really led me to search for yoga for migraine. And there's yoga for so many other health conditions out there. And it was very perplexing given how common migraine is that I really didn't find anything out there. So out of my own search, that's really what drove me to study more of the calming types of yoga, like yoga nidra, restorative yoga, yin yoga, more of the meditative practices that can be adjusted and don't just depend on getting a workout, which is so typical in more of our modern yoga nowadays.
Right.
So that's what took me to where I am. I did my yoga training eventually, and I made that decision to actually stop being a public school teacher and then try to develop yoga for migraine, not only for myself, but for others with migraine, because I just felt like there was such a need. So yeah, and then fast forward to where we are now, and I focus on health coaching for women with migraine online, and that's where we incorporate yoga, we incorporate pain reprocessing therapy, and just helping us implement regular self-care practices, because it is, as women, it is so easy to put ourselves on the back burner, and so many health issues can eventually pop to the surface after decades of not taking good care of ourselves.
Right. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing your backstory. You did mention in developing your program and your health coaching for women with migraine that you address pain. So let's touch on that just a little bit. What's involved in this program, and how did you discover it to be effective for those
Yeah.
suffering with migraines?
So even though we all experience pain, it's a universal experience. Most people, even doctors, don't really understand the science behind it. And pain, really, from a evolutionary, scientific, neuroscience-based perspective, is there to protect us. We see it as an annoyance or something we can develop a lot of fear for, but it is a protective mechanism. We break our leg, we feel pain, so we don't keep running and we don't injure ourselves. If you understand that pain is a reaction to our perceived threat. So if we are trying to protect ourselves, that means we perceive threat. There's danger, there's fear. With pain reprocessing therapy, the idea is to help retrain your brain to feel safer, so that your brain is not sounding the alarm to create pain and protect yourself. When we develop chronic pain, especially, there's this idea that there might not necessarily be a structural or biochemical issue at play. There might be more of this brain processing challenge in which our brain has become hypersensitized and is just perceiving threat everywhere. In the case of migraine, that's so common. Migraine triggers can be virtually everything: the light, the weather, food. And so we, especially people with migraine, we develop a lot of fear about triggers. And with pain reprocessing therapy, this is a newer approach to help people with all types of chronic pain to change their relationship with pain, change their relationship to stress, learn how to exist in a calmer way, so that our brain is, okay, we're feeling safer, we're feeling good, and that pain level doesn't have to be as intense and frequent.
Hence why yoga,
Yes,
calming
exactly.
yoga, and even the meditation are all those modalities for calming the nervous system and helping
Yeah,
the brain feel, okay, it's safe. Because
with the pain reprocessing therapy, some of it is very cognitive and it's based in psychology. And so it's great for like helping us with our mindset about pain and understanding our beliefs and responding to pain in a different way, responding to our anxiety and our preoccupation about our symptoms in a new way. And what I love about yoga is that it also brings that sense of safety from the bottom up rather than top down. So we're experiencing safety in our body, in our breath. We're also, as we do that, we're teaching our brain, hey, I can feel good in my body. When we develop chronic pain, it can feel like not a safe place that you want to hang out in and be. So yoga, to me, when we We do it in a gentle way. We give lots of options for poses. I often will present practices like for higher pain days or lower pain days. So there's always something that we can do to help ourselves, even if we're physically feeling unwell.
Yes, yes, of course, because physically we might be feeling absolutely miserable, but energetically we have the ability to go inward and teach our body through perhaps the breath, and you can speak to this, and the mindset, calming down the nervous system to release some of the energies that don't serve us and tap into some energies that can bring us about a sense of calm, a sense of comfort.
Yeah, I think
Really,
especially when we're in intense pain with maybe you have a migraine attack, you're in bed, or you just don't want to go out. It can be absolutely debilitating for people. There can feel that sense of a loss of control, or there's just nothing you can do about it, or oh, I can't do yoga, like that's way too much, or even going for a walk. And so I'm trying to change those practices so that no, actually, like I can be in bed and literally breathe. I can listen to yoga nidra meditation. I can do some practices in bed. So that gives us a sense of self agency. And that's really important when we're dealing with unpredictable health conditions, that there is some small thing we can do to help ourselves feel better.
beautiful. Before we get into some of the specific practices and maybe encourage your listeners who haven't tried yoga or just are not regular practitioners to take it up, but I do want to touch a little bit more on what's happening with the body. So, in your work and having launched your program, your website, and working in health coaching, and now you're writing for Migraine magazine, migraine.com, in your research and in your writing, presenting articles, what have you found in terms of the interconnectedness with menopause
Mhm.
and migraines?
Yeah, great question. So this is migraine is a health condition that does affect women more than men, about 3 times more likely that women would develop migraine. And it has definitely, for many women, a hormonal component. So even prior to menopause, like personally, menstrual migraine is very common. And those times are also harder to treat, those hormonal migraines. That was definitely the case for me. I had to take way more medication. It was just a harder, but at least somewhat predictable migraine for me. So then, as you're approaching perimenopause, that's when now we have more of that fluctuation of estrogen. And the idea when with the menstrual migraine, it's that drop of estrogen that maybe can trigger the migraine attack. And so many women experiment with different kinds of birth control, me included, to just see how if we can level things out. With migraine, like we've talked about, it's any sort of change can trigger an attack, whether that's in our outside environment or our internal environment. Those hormonal changes can be a biochemical, just little trigger that we can't always help. That's might just trigger attacks for us. So then coming to perimenopause, if you're already someone who has migraine and that's a part of your life, and it can worsen. We've got all these fluctuations. It also could be a time, even if you maybe didn't have very bad migraine before, that you might start getting newer or worse symptoms of migraine. And that can be an indication, oh, perimenopause is on the way. And historically, most neurologists and doctors have told women, especially those who have more the hormonal type migraine, like, oh, once you get through menopause, like you're in the clear and you won't have migraine anymore.
Uh,
And I'd say most of the women I've talked to have not had that experience, unfortunately. Maybe once everything's passed, they might get a little reprieve, but definitely through the perimenopause and menopause, it can definitely exacerbate migraine, all those changes, the hormonal fluctuations, and not necessarily just evaporate once you've gone through those changes. So that's where we do many other practices to help what we call raise your migraine threshold, raise that that point in which you are feeling more resilient. And then if something tips you overboard, then that might create an attack. So we're trying to build you up, build up your resilience,
Okay.
help decrease your sensitivity in all these other ways. So that might be medication, although I love holistic practices. I take medication myself for migraine. I'm not shamed about it. And then, yeah, there's lifestyle practices. There's self-care, like getting solid sleep, which that can affect, right? Our migraine during perimenopause and menopause. So all these little factors, any of those changes can make migraine more challenging as well.
Indeed, I don't suffer from the migraines, but I will say when you touched on the sleep, if I have not had a good night's sleep, my cognitive functions, anything related to brain health, takes a severe nosedive. And I'm sure it does for physical ailments as well, physical symptoms, and every woman's symptoms will show up differently. But by far, the cognitive health is definitely one area that can trigger mental health concerns as well when we're not cognitively functioning well. But I can't imagine then you add on the intensity of that pounding headache that just beyond measure. So now, and I'm thinking of the clients that you work with, of course, it is when they're suffering the most is probably when they want to be slipping into these holistic practices to get some relief. So how do you work with them, first of all, when they present themselves with these migraines to address their concerns and then help them feel safe as they integrate yoga as a holistic practice?
Yeah. By the time most women reach out to me, they've run the gamut of tried all the things, medication, acupuncture. They've tried a lot. And most women, by the time they work with me, they have also developed chronic migraine. So that is that 15 or more headache days a month. And it's once you get to that point, it really does affect your life. No migraine attack is a walk in the park, but when it is that frequent, even daily for many women, yeah, people are desperate to find some relief. Beyond Migraine is my main coaching program, and that's where for 8 weeks, we focus every week with a daily yoga practice, and those practices start in the most minimal movement, actually no movement at all, with yoga nidra meditation, which is a guided relaxation that you can do lying down, which is a bonus, as most of us with migraine spend a lot of time lying down in bed. It's very deeply relaxing. Many people with migraine have a lot of sleep challenges, so can just help to shore up your energy. When you're in a lot of pain, your energy is low. And we start just with this kind of restful, let's recharge our batteries with a daily practice. And then we also integrate group coaching calls. So that's a beautiful way where women from all over the world are together that all understand what it's like to live with migraine, and we learn from each other. It's a safe place to just be understood because it can feel very isolating, and there's a lot of stigma around migraine, even though it's so common that it's an invisible illness, so people don't see that how much you're suffering if you are. It's also historically considered a woman's disease, and so anything regarding women's disease tends to be historically put to the side and not taken seriously and not well researched. So all of these things coming together as a community, and then we in our group calls really focus on that pain reprocessing. So there are different mindfulness type practices as part of pain reprocessing. One of the most notable ones is called somatic tracking, and it sounds simple, but it's profound. It's really where when you are having a lower pain day, you come towards your pain. You observe in a mindful way what is the sensations of your pain. Where is it? Is it pounding? Is it burning? If you could describe it, how dense it is. So we're giving some description to it, and we're letting it be what it's going to be. We're trying to have a sense of neutrality so that we decrease that fear response. With repetition, the idea is these sorts of practices will help retrain our brains to not trigger when we experience symptoms that anxiety, that fear, that doom and gloom. Oh no, what's the rest of my day going to be like? That we can, treat it more neutrally. And then we chat about very practical things, whether that's sleep or in our call yesterday, we had a good discussion about what it feels like to us to be active and productive, and also what it feels like to rest and relax. Because most of the women I work with, they've been successful professionals all their lives, they've had families, they're used to go, 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 and my needs are on the back burner, and we're going to take care of everybody else. And it's a challenge. We have our own beliefs about rest and relaxation, and that it's really hard to sometimes give ourselves permission to do that. So we get into all the mindset and practical aspects of living better with migraine. Throughout all this, people are learning about neuroscience, yoga philosophy. So we're trying to bridge the East and West together to help people, one baby step at a time, make small little adjustments to their daily lives to help raise their migraine threshold so that they're better rested. We focus on what we call the seeds of migraine. So this was developed by some neurologists, these lifestyle practices. The acronym SEEDS is sleep, eating, exercise, keeping a migraine diary, and stress relief. Did I mention that? Yeah. So that's something that guides us. Here are some research-backed practices that are great for everybody's health, but particularly those of us with migraine. Our brains like routine. We like keeping things at a predictable pace. So we try to shore up those little habits.
Yes. Okay, lots of takeaways from Thank you for sharing with us the breakdown of your 8-week program. And the things that really pulled out for me were the fact that right away it's like triage. We're saying we need to get right to treating what's going on, and that means slipping into a state of calm rest and feeling understood. Coming together. You're not alone, you're in community. You have your people to share. Really, really, really important. But I also really appreciate, Adriane, that you shared with us somatic tracking. Very similar to the work, and I'm speaking from my experience when I work with physiotherapists and even yoga therapists to treat my post-traumatic stress disorder and a concussion. And those are the two reasons why I went on the Love Your Brain yoga teacher training where we met. And so I think that it's really important to highlight it because it is connected. There is overlap, and that is developing a relationship with the pain and observing it. I love how you basically describe it to decrease our fear response so that we can raise that migraine threshold. And the same would be true in many situations where it's a mental health issue or something related to trauma, a concussion. It's all about having that relationship with the pain in such a way that I know that you're screaming at me and making noise. But let's explore this a little bit more. What is triggering it? What is making it want to scream? Go ahead.
Yeah, and coming to that place of self-compassion, because either with pain, we want to get rid of it and run away from it. We want to fight or just push through it. And so all of these are that fight or flight response. So learning to soften that, to have even love and warmth towards the pain. It's a helicopter parent that's always just ready to pounce. And so we try to retrain that so that, okay, we can take some risks. We can maybe go outside in the sunshine and I will be okay. Building up that confidence. And that takes time. And that's another thing in working with our nervous systems and migraine. Any change we do make, we want to just go teeny tiny. So even with people who maybe even walking, they haven't walked, they haven't been physically active, there's a lot of fear going outside that will trigger an attack. We might just have people start sitting on the porch for 5 minutes. And then maybe the next week, walking to the end of the block and back. And then we just keep adding a little bit, and our nervous system feels happy with that. It's not triggering an attack, and then it just builds more and more confidence so that people have momentum to keep going.
I'm curious, with your clients that you work with, have you seen an overlap? They may have migraines, of course, but there's something else. Is there another, maybe a neurodivergent trait underlining, even perhaps like a head injury?
Yeah, good question. Everybody's experience is so unique. So there are a lot of common comorbidities with migraine, especially like mental health. Anxiety and depression are very common. I think it's bidirectional, not only, hey, when you're living in that much pain and maybe you can't work anymore, sure, that's depressing. You have anxiety about your next attack. And also, when we maybe have a predisposition to being more anxious, that can heighten our nervous system, make us more hypervigilant, and that can bring on more migraine attacks as well. So that's a big aspect. I think that's underserved in our migraine community, is just understanding the mental health aspects and supporting that. I really try to work with my clients from a biopsychosocial approach. Interestingly, though, really only in the last 5 years have there been developed migraine specific preventative drugs. There, in the past, people have had to use, and still do, blood pressure medication, epilepsy, even antidepressants. It's just taken that long for really migraine research and medication to come around. So we do have a lot of great options with the biomedical approach, but the psycho and the social, there's so many other levers we can adjust to help improve our migraine. So mental health, learning how to work with your mindset, having less fear, building up your confidence, and then our social relationships. And that's another one actually that is probably the least recognized, of how many women in particular, we have been conditioned to take care of everyone else and not ourselves. And that sets up our health and our nervous system to be on higher alert, to just feel guilty, right? When we rest, or we might rest after the migraine attack, but to actually get many of us to proactively take care of ourselves regularly. That's a hard one for many of the women I work with.
And certainly, because you were in the workforce, I was in the workforce, menopause symptoms can come up during any time of the day, but it's similar, same with a migraine. And when we're in a social setting where we're expected to perform and we are suddenly limited, reduced in our strength, in our stamina, and our focus because of a symptom, the migraine, we can't feel safe right away. And this is one of the things I'm trying to advocate for, is to make an organization both mental health support and aware and menopause aware. You have to have opportunities where women can feel safe when they're having an attack, when they're having an experience that is going to interfere with their mental and physical well-being. And very important. So that makes sense that it's not really well understood or looked at from the social perspective, because we were out and doing things and living our lives and working and having careers. Where do you go in a social setting that allows you to feel safe? And right back to your point, we have to put it aside to deal with what is the priority in front of us, because we switch hats, we switch into that role of caregiver, mom, career woman, and then everything else, our health has to take the back seat. I'd love to see more work being done on this. Fortunately, we're filling those gaps by offering the health coaching, the yoga programs, and the education, that over time, hopefully that's a tool in the toolbox where us women can just pull out when in that moment of panic, of fear, of pain, and address it.
For both menopause and migraine, that sense of stigma of talking about it, of, hey, I'm having these symptoms, I needed to have accommodations. It can feel very delicate or vulnerable to even talk about it with other people.
Yes. And fortunately, slow, but we are breaking that silence and making it more acceptable. and well understood. And it starts with education, and it starts with the work that you're doing in your field, people stepping up and saying, I've lived this pain. This is my journey. Now it's my turn to help others. And on that note, I'm really curious, Adriane, how did you come to say, I'm leaving workforce, I now need to focus on building a program? How long did it take you to switch gears and finally
Mm.
start getting clients?
It was a really hard decision. And a big part of why I did quit teaching was because of my own health and migraine. I was at that point where I just felt like I taught, maxed myself out energetically. Teaching is a very high energy, high stress type of profession.
Yeah.
And then I had my own two young kids at home, and I was just wiped out. And then migraine in the mix. Like I felt like there was very little joy and little reserve left in me to really enjoy my life anymore. So I'd say probably the biggest reason I stopped teaching was for my own health and to find something more sustainable for my own migraine. And so creating this online business really has helped me personally. It's flexible for me to balance on some days when I need to take it easier. I don't have to be out there in front of a group of kids all day. So that's been great. And then whenever I practice yoga or teach yoga, these are all things that help me as well. So that's been wonderful for my own health. I actually resigned from public school teaching right in 2019 before COVID hit, which I'm very grateful I didn't have to be a teacher during that very difficult time. And it coincided with that boom in interest in online courses when the pandemic hit. So I think in some regards, the timing was lucky, and I was just developing these online programs. I was a speaker in what's called the Migraine World Summit in 2021, which is a huge online event for people with migraine. And I think that helped get some interest and awareness in yoga and migraine. So I started just teaching like online Zoom classes, building up my audience online and developing my social media presence. And then later in 2021, 22, when I started, all right, I want to do something more, not just yoga, and then tried to develop it into more of a robust health coaching program where I really could dive deep with people, get really fast results. So for the majority of women I work with, by the end of 8 weeks, migraine symptoms are down by about half their frequency or intensity. For some women, it's very dramatic. They might experience 20 migraine days a month, and by the end of my program, maybe they experience 5 days of migraine a month. So the impact of doing this in a very guided but also comprehensive way, where we're looking at all those aspects of the biopsychosocial model and tweaking and adjusting things to support each person. By the end of 8 weeks, everybody I work with is able to be more physically active. And just that alone has so many
Wow.
health benefits for the future of their lives. As a result, they have more energy, their mood is better. So it creates this virtuous cycle when we can focus on our health, on our self-care, and have some momentum with it. With migraine and so many other chronic pain conditions, it's very up and down, and we might have good days and bad days. And it's sometimes hard to feel like you can get momentum because we can often are like starting and stopping things. But
Yeah.
with this approach, it's very tiny changes over time that really make a difference.
So that by the end of the 8 weeks, it's been quite noticeable. And
Yeah.
those are fantastic results. Some reduction up to 50% in their symptoms.
Yeah.
And
And there is no cure for migraine, unfortunately. I still personally have migraine, but I'm not at that chronic level I used to be. So I do firmly believe that wherever people are starting, we can get them down, like wherever they are on the spectrum, whether that's daily migraine, we can bring that level down. And then over time, eventually get that lower.
okay. Now, is your offering entirely online?
It is. My whole yoga for migraine business is all virtual. So the coaching program has women from all over the world, in North America, Europe. I have a client in New Zealand right now. And then I also have a lower cost membership of just like my yoga practices. So for people who just want to get their yoga practice, we have some live sessions with that as well. And that's a great entry point for people to have access to accessible, real specific practices just for people with migraine.
That's wonderful. Adrienne, I'm really inspired about how you've structured your business and make it accessible and also make it inclusive. You don't have to be a migraine sufferer, but as we've discussed in this episode, there's so much overlap and just experiencing the menopause symptoms that I'm sure the potential clients can benefit from your online yoga classes. So let our listeners know where they can find you.
Yeah, thank you. You can check out my website, yogamigraine.com. And then on social, I'm most active in my Yoga for Migraine Facebook group. So you can search Yoga for Migraine Facebook group, and I bring some sort of live class, free classes in there, blog posts, just there's also just discussion, and it's a really great way for folks to connect to others, realize, oh, I'm not the only person who's experiencing this, but also learn how to approach migraine in this more holistic way. As many other Facebook groups for migraine, there is more of that pharmaceutical focus of like, oh, have you tried this medication or this? And here we are like, okay, here's some things we can do for ourselves that don't necessarily only focus on medication.
I love that. Like you said earlier on, to take agency
Mm-hmm.
and really tapping into those modalities that come to us naturally, which is our sleep, which is our eating habits, which is movement. The body's designed to move, and the stress management, but also in your seeds program, the diary, journaling. I think that's very important. It's very cathartic to write, but to journal, because that is your living record of the progress that you're making or how you're feeling.
Exactly.
And to see the changes as we grow. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, I'm going to ask you if there's one key takeaway, maybe even if it's a yoga move, to share with listeners right now to relieve them of any of their symptoms they may be experiencing, if it's migraine or even menopausal. What might that be?
Well, just first to recognize if you're listening and you have migraine and experiencing menopause, it is very normal for your migraine symptoms to change and possibly worsen during this time. So if you're noticing that, you're not going crazy. It's part of the deal. But what we can do to help support ourselves is to really proactively do something every day to help ourselves relax, to disconnect, to reduce our sense of sensory stimulation. For me, that's yoga. We also do a lot to relieve neck and shoulder tension. A lot of us with migraine experience that. So if there's just a little yoga practice that I do a lot, it's really to just let my ear relax to my shoulder. And then the other way, you can sigh out your mouth. Sighing out your mouth helps activate the relaxation response and reset, taking those little movement and mindfulness breaks to reset.
Beautiful. I'm going to get all the links in the show notes. If you're considering checking out Adrienne's program, you can join her Facebook group for a free class. But if you really want to take a deep dive and you are suffering, and I'm going to say it doesn't necessarily have to be migraine focus, but a TBI, concussion, or even some other neurodivergent trait that is really debilitating your ability to live a quality of life, check out this 8-week program. This has been fantastic. I'm excited to share.
Thank you so much, Mary. It's been a pleasure talking with you and reconnecting.
Adrienne's journey illuminates how yoga evolved from a personal passion into a professional calling, and I am so glad she shared her story. And so here are my takeaways. Number 1, the science of pain reprocessing. Pain, a universal phenomenon, serves as an evolutionary protective mechanism. Adrienne enlightens us about pain reprocessing therapy, which helps individuals retrain their brains to perceive less threat, subsequently reducing pain intensity. Cultivating safety and agency through yoga. Yoga, of course, fosters this sense of safety and personal agency, even when physical symptoms are overwhelming. Through available practices and a focus on gentle movements, yoga can become an inclusive tool that caters to individuals' needs and provides reliefs and cultivating resilience. And number 3, menopause and migraines. Research underscores that hormonal changes during menopause can exacerbate migraines. With fluctuations of estrogen being a trigger, Adriane emphasizes the importance of viewing each symptom's interconnectedness rather than isolating issues. Her holistic approach aims to build resilience through lifestyle adjustments and mindful practice. And number 4, building an inclusive community. By offering virtual programs, Adriane champions inclusivity, ensuring support is accessible worldwide. And finally, embracing change with compassion. The transformative journey that we discussed in this podcast episode brings to light the power of embracing change with compassion and community support. Whether it is migraine management, coping with menopause, or seeking a quality of life post-head injury, still and moving meditation proves to be a versatile modality. So while the challenges faced may be individual, the solutions can be communal and interconnected. So you can always check out Adriane's classes or engage with the community to explore how these practices can enhance your well-being. The link is in the show notes. Here's something else. I am offering bonus content soon after this episode airs. If you're listening in real time, check back on Monday, March 31st. During my Love Your Brain teacher training this month, we had the privilege to experience and to lead a yoga nidra session. Nidra means sleep. I created one session that I would love for you to try out. It's just under 20 minutes, and you can use it at any time to downregulate your nervous system, manage symptoms, feel rested and rejuvenated and supported, and maybe even fall asleep. Let's quietly and softly transition out of March like a lamb. If today's insights resonated with you, I'd love for you to be part of our growing community of menopause disruptors. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening right now. And if you know someone who can benefit from these conversations, please share this episode. Sometimes a simple act of sharing can be the first step in someone's healing journey. And hey, if you're ready to take the next step in your menopause journey, I'm here to support you. You can find all my services, including my comprehensive menopause intelligence digital course, one-on-one coaching programs, and workplace education services at mlcoaching.com. It's in the show notes. Want to stay connected and get regular doses of menopause wisdom? Follow me on Instagram at Menopause Disruptor Podcast, where I share tips, insights, and real conversations about navigating this transformative phase of life. Let's continue to disrupt this menopause conversation together. Remember, midlife should be the best life, and it will be. Namaste.